Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Hot Takes. We're back after a little break, joined again by Davide and Nick. Nick's been on the road, as I'm sure everyone will be aware of at MSI. A question for you both: when you're traveling, what's the one food thing that you miss, or like maybe you tried to take with you, take a backup? Anyone?
Let me think about it. I think, yeah, I think actually I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and I said I'm really craving for pizza. But the only pizza place I've seen here is like Domino's, and that doesn't really,
Scratch the
make
itch.
me want to eat pizza. Yeah, so I think it's pizza. Yeah.
I don't really have one from MSI, but like there's some pretty good Canadian exclusive snacks. I converted Travis Gafford's camera guy Drew to all dressed chips, which is a Canadian only thing. We also have ketchup chips. So like when I'm leaving Canada, I'll sometimes bring some of the Canadian exclusive stuff. But for MSI, it was basically right next to my hometown, so I got to eat all the things I usually do.
Enough. I'd say for my one's a bit out of the box because I like fully moved away from the UK, so I need there's not that many things that I crave, but then I've got like a couple of like actual food items that I try to bring over when I can, and the biggest one is gravy granules, which might sound completely foreign, but um,
Yeah, I've never
Nick will
heard of
be well
it.
aware of gravy. And I think it's the kind of gravy you'd have on like poutine. I'm pretty sure, like the dark, like rich gravy, not like the American gravy and biscuits one, like the sausage gravy that's like really light. So in
Yeah.
the UK, it's traditional on a Sunday. You have a Sunday roast dinner where you have like a roast meat with vegetables, some other bits, and on top of it you put a gravy that's like traditionally would be made with the roast meat. So after you roast the meat, you'd make a gravy out of it and put it on top. But in the UK, because having a roast dinner like that is so popular, also like people don't want to actually cook it properly from scratch and make gravy because they just can't be arsed or don't know how. You can buy like a powdered version of gravy and you mix it with hot water or like boiling water, and then it makes like a thick gravy to pour over all of it. So I have when my family come to visit and they ask me if there's anything to bring, it's always gravy granules like from the supermarket. I've always got a good stock of those. The UK listeners will know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway,
I listen. I know exactly what you're talking about. I was in Wales for a year, and London for a year. Shuts up.
good. Do you have like a roast dinner at a pub anytime? That's like quite classic as well.
Oh, yeah, yes, plenty of times. Plenty of times. There was a bar that was run by the same guy who ran the student union bar, and there was like a student special on Sundays where you could go down and get a roast dinner. And
Lovely.
many a time when I was too lazy.
Yeah, can't beat them. Especially for a meal that's like reasonably healthy as well, like full of
Yeah,
meat and veg.
it's a lot of protein.
Yeah. Cool. Let's talk about some esports then, shall we? So, um, there's been a
If we
lot going
must.
on actually. Been chock a block. I think we'll maybe start with Valorant and then move on to League afterwards. And in Valorant, I
Makes
guess the big
sense.
story over the last few days is that Team Heretics, after losing since 2024, after losing 5 grand finals in a row, they've finally got one over the line. And it was so at the Esports World Cup, their first Valorant event, we had Team Heretics and Fnatic in the final. Fnatic had beaten Team Heretics a couple of months ago. They in the EMEA final, 3-0, and Heretics were like basically mental boomed after that, from what I could see. Like I interviewed Miniboo after that game. He was not in a good mood. They went to Masters Toronto. They lost their first 2 matches and got eliminated immediately. Like it looked like they'd been totally, totally done in basically from that. Um,
hmm
they've got to the Esports World Cup. They had a good run, obviously, to get to the final. The format makes it like, because it's like singular limb. There was like a bit of best of one stuff, so it's like a bit of a messy format where you could maybe like fluke a run. And then once you get to the final in a best of 5 against Fnatic, who had just got to the Toronto final as well, like Heretics were massive underdogs. They went 2-0 down, and in the first 2 maps they got 5 rounds. Davide, you were there. Was there any inkling in the arena that they were about to do a reverse sweep?
Honestly, I was watching the games and I was talking to some of my friends who were also watching. It was like everyone thought it was going to be a 3-0. Like I even said, like if TH somehow gets map 3, it's still going to be like Fnatic's win in the end. And then I went back to the media room and like it was never like it got dragged down so long, and then it like out of nowhere just they turned it around. And the whole funny thing is like there were like 3 close maps.
Yeah.
3, 4, and 5. So it's honestly could have gone either way. But I was actually quite surprised at how, because I thought TH was already kind of mental booming
100%.
after the first 2 maps. And actually they brought it back. I mean, like Wood, I think it was Bo. Like Bo was like they were pulling, like carrying the team quite hard.
Yeah.
In the following maps.
I think it's massive for Boo as well because he's
It was really enjoyable.
Yeah, because Boo is the IGL and he's been there for a few years as well, so it kind of feels more than probably anyone else on the team feels like his team. And for the IGL to be the one that's like fragging and like getting all the kills to, I know Woot like had a couple of ridiculous maps. But yeah, for Boo to be like fragging as well as he was doing his best Nats cosplay. But yeah, you say like it was really close maps. The ones they won 13-11, 13-10, 13-10. So even like any one of those couple of rounds when it went the other way. And literally when it was 2-0 down, 2-0, I was getting ready. I was actually thinking about this episode of Hot Takes. I was going to come on here and basically say that Team Heretics are not ever going to win a final until they probably change a player and like get somebody in that has won stuff. Because the thing I'd written about it before as well is like, because what a lot of people have been saying this whole time where they've lost these 5 finals over the last year and a half is people just keep saying, you know, once they just get one of them and they kind of get over that block, then it's going to be really easy. They're such a good team because obviously to get to 5 finals in a year and a half means that you are a world-class team, but to lose 5 in a row means that there's like clearly a problem with that final leg. So from my perspective, it was like, yeah, if you're going to lose 5 in a row, the win isn't going to magically happen. Like something's got to change for you to be able to actually do that one. But fucking hell, they did it. And one thing as well, so I'd done a piece before the tournament, just kind of a few of the narratives, and I think what was quite big for EWC for a few teams is there were a few sides that were like that had some kind of record or something, some kind of hump like that they were trying to get over. So for G2, they're smashing it in Americas, but they've lost the 2 global events already this year, the 2 Masters, despite being favourites of both. So they're kind of in this situation of maybe having a mental block of some kind, and Team Heretics the same. Fnatic also trying to get back to winning a global. They just lost one. So there was this kind of thing of a few teams where for their kind of story, winning this would have been massive. And the way I saw it is where it's like a new event as well, and it, you know, obviously doesn't have the same like pedigree as a Masters or as a Champs, especially for a team like Heretics. I think it was kind of the perfect time to do it as well, where there probably is a bit less pressure. I'm sure once they get, you know, to the deeper rounds in that 5th map, I'm sure it would have felt like any other final. But just in general, in like the run and the whole kind of situation around the tournament, they probably would have felt a bit less pressure than if it was like another Masters final. That would have had like more stakes. But there we go, they did it. And it's nice as well because that Heretics roster is basically like every neutral's favourite team for the last year and a half, because it's easy to forget now, but when they formed at the start of last year, it was a group of players that everyone thought was going to be completely shit, and they were, you know, in all the tier lists and everything, everyone put them dead last in EMEA, and then they came out and got into 2 EMEA finals, 2 global finals, and yeah, well, one of the best teams in the world. So it's kind of nice for everyone to finally see them get that over the line. It's sad for Fnatic. I'd still like to see them get back to winning a big event. but their time could come.
Yeah, that was quite heartbreaking.
Yeah,
And because I think especially at the venue there were a lot of like Fnatic fans. Like it was clear that the Fnatic chants were much bigger than the TH ones. Because basically what happens, like the two teams played on like facing each other.
Yeah.
And then obviously like the stands were representing each team's side. So depending on where you were seated, you were kind of like rooting for one team instead of the other. And the chant, I was sitting on the Fnatic side, and it was clear like I was getting my eardrums killed every time like Fnatic was winning around. And then when I think it was the kayak ace, there was like a bit like, yeah, it was a crazy ace from Fnatic side, and it was like, yeah, that almost kind of killed me. I was hyped, but I was just not expecting that kind of like noise and like you know like screaming and stuff from like a couple of hundreds of people. I think probably the whole venue was like close to 1,000 or something like that, maybe not even. But it was full. Like the good thing. I mean, the good thing. I think the great thing about was that at least I saw very crowded stands, which kind of means that people are still flying in to come and watch. And this was also for the third, fourth place, Gen.G TH, and then also Gen.G PRX, which now we can also talk about because obviously there's some stuff going on there as well.
Yeah. Sure. It's good. I think it's sensible when you put some things in like in maybe a event in a location where there is not like a massive capacity, but ideally you just want to have the capacity for like exactly what you could fill, and then it's just much better atmosphere than having like a big venue. Like remember like the LEC finals last year, was it the one where they did it in Munich, and like you could see it on stream that like half the thing was empty and it was just a bit awkward. Like if you just do a smaller thing where it's packed with people, like it is a much better atmosphere. I've shout out your interviews, Davide, as well, because you've been pumping them out, and it reminds me of the one that Chronicle did with you, where he mentioned getting booed as well.
Oh, yeah.
Did you notice that? So that was I think he said that was against PRX in the semis.
Yeah, that was actually quite clear. Like even the players, like I remember, I think Alpha, on that day, like came out after like a map, like they were coming back on stage, and just turned it to the PRX fan crowd, and it was like this. It was like like thumbs down and like calling them out because apparently like everyone was booing. They were like booing a lot during like I think during the PRX Fnatic series. I think they were a lot more polite in the finals. But yeah, it's I think it's fine.
What was it like
it's
PRX versus Gen.G? Because I guess it would have been PRX fans, but then if they're not in the final, maybe they're not there, or I don't know. I guess everyone loves PRX as well.
I actually wasn't there. I wasn't there because I was working on other stuff. So by the time I got there, but I asked around, and apparently that was also quite filled. There were quite a lot of Gen.G fans coming in. So I would assume that the Gen.G, like both PRX and Gen.G side, were quite active in terms of fan base. But actually, the one thing I noticed, like there were a lot of locals as well, especially for Fnatic. Like there were quite a lot of like local fans, I think.
It was funny how they had like they basically had a camera guy on Sam Matthews, like the Fnatic CEO, across the whole across the whole tournament. Like every time Fnatic was playing, every 2 rounds they cut to him. And I think he noticed it partway through the tournament as well, and then he'd be like looking awkwardly every time because he knew because he could obviously see it on the screen as well, and then suddenly he just sees his face. But then once the turnaround started happening and Team Heretics were coming back, and then Team Heretics were winning the final map, and then it would cut to him, and he's like, and it kept cutting to him. That was quite funny. Right, we've got one more thing to chat about as well. Some massive news that came out yesterday. I promise we'll let you talk soon, Nick. I should have started with League.
No worries.
We should have started with League so you can go to bed. Poor guy.
No. I'm loving getting caught up. Listen, I covered Boaster's first qualifier at one of my
Oh, wow.
esports gigs and have been a long time fan. So I'm loving the updates because I've not been paying any attention to anything Valorant during MSI.
You're just a VIP live audience member until we move on.
I'm loving it, bro. I'm loving it. I get my favorite esports people to catch me up on Valorant. It's sick.
Nice. Well, here we go. So, yeah, Mind Freak is now allowed to leave PaperX, and I think this is like not a surprise to really anyone. But yeah, just a bit of an end of an era, really, because obviously since since Patman came into PaperX, I think it was in March that they signed him in stage 1, and then they were like sharing space, him and Mind Freak. But then Patman's just been so unbelievably good, like Masters Toronto, which obviously PaperX have famously won. Mind Freak was not involved, at least in the playing sense. He was in the booth the whole time as basically as like a de facto assistant coach. And their head coach Alex had like talked about how helpful it was having him there because he can, I guess it's different because he's played with the core of PaperX for so many years as well that that he kind of knows how to talk to them as a fellow player rather than as a coach who's kind of like got the authority over them. So it probably was like a unique thing to have him helping out on the coaching side, but clearly he wants to play, which is totally understandable. And so what's basically happened now is that, and it's like a 2-in-1 announcement, and it's not 100% clear what happened first, but it says that PaperX is moving him officially to their like inactive roster. So before he was a sub, but he was never playing. So they've kind of said now officially he's not part of the main roster. But then as part of that announcement, he has expressed his desire to leave, essentially, to be able to play. So he's a restricted free agent, which I suppose means they can, like, because he's under contract still, but they'll allow him to leave if he gets an offer. The timing's a bit tricky for him. Like he said in his own announcement that it would be for next year. I think if he'd have pulled the trigger on this a bit earlier, he probably could have got something for stage 2. The issue there is that PaperX were at Masters and then immediately at the Esports World Cup. So if he makes any decision there, it's kind of while a lot of other stuff's going on. Maybe he doesn't want to interfere with these big tournaments that they've had. But it's crazy, like the whole story of that core. So it's the first one of their initial core of players that started with PaperX way back in 2020. So he's the first one that's leaving those. And I was trying to think what's like the closest league equivalent to explain to league viewers, but I don't think there really even is one. Because it's a mad story with PaperX where 3 of the players plus the coach were with PaperX as a Counter-Strike team, and then in 2020, 2000 or early 2021, maybe I can't remember exactly which one it was. Their team transitioned to Valorant, and so their whole roster and coach just went from being a Counter-Strike team to a Valorant team, and until Mind Freak's, until his imminent departure, 3 of those 5 players plus the coach still have been there the entire time and are there still now as this team that is one of the best in the world, that's gone to 1 million global events and obviously just won the most recent one. So they've got, I think it was Forsaken, Mind Freak, and I think it was Davide. Yeah, Davide, and then their head coach Alex have literally been with the team since they were a Counter-Strike team, which is just like a crazy story. And bearing in mind, Valorant has only been going for 5 years as well. They've basically been the core of that roster the whole time, and it's a roster that the fans love. They're pretty much one of probably like the top 3 most popular teams in Valorant, largely because of that, because it's something that it's rare in like any esports to have even like one player be on a team for that long, and it obviously helps for fandom to like have a connection to that team. Like that could be, if that's your favorite player and he's on that same team for 4 or 5 years, it's obviously really easy to like get more attached to that team as a whole. But then when you've got 4 members of that team that's there the whole time, for the fans it's like a family. It's one of those things. It's almost like weird to think of them not being there. Like bloody Maldini at AC Milan. I'll do a Milan reference for you, Davide. It's that kind of thing. It's like you can't imagine like any of those players and the coach. It's hard to imagine them in a team that's not PaperX. End of an era. But there we go. Totally understandable from his perspective. Totally understandable from the org side, because Batman coming in literally like immediately gave them a Masters title that they've been trying to get for 4 years. So there we have it. It's your time to shine, Nick. We can finally.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we can
is
finally. You can wake up, Nick. Wake up. We're going to talk about League.
Whoa. All right. I'm in.
Cool.
I'm in.
Now, obviously,
I would just wanted to say that obviously any time that like a long-term player that's been there for so long leaves, you have a stick versus matchup narrative just like for free. That first time that you get Mind Freak VPRX, oh, what a match.
Yeah. And I'm sure he won't be short of potential suitors as well. But there we go.
No, especially not.
So, League of Legends. Genji.
It's a game.
Once again, MSI champions. And it was annoying for me that I couldn't watch any games as it is because they're all on in the middle of the night. And then when I wake up and scroll Twitter for the upper bracket final, and I see we had a bloody 5-game banger, Genji versus T1. For the grand final, I thought, right, I'm going to go to bed early.
We had a 4-game banger.
Oh, was it 4?
And then there was a 5th game. No. It was a 5-game series, but there were 4 bangers.
Oh, right,
and
yeah,
the 5th game.
Yeah, understood. That's we can get onto that because that's a whole debate as well. But yeah, I wake up, scroll my phone, and I see the updates as they go. Game 1-0, 1-1, and then get into the final, and I'm thinking, for God's sake, I wish I was watching this. So for the grand final, just by chance, I had a bit of an early night, and I thought, oh, maybe if I'm not going to set my alarm early, but if I just wake up a bit early, maybe I'll just see if it's still on. And I woke up at like 6:30 or 6:45 or something. And I thought, oh, maybe it's still going. And then I got my phone up, and then it was like Ruler carrying the trophy over to the analyst desk to talk to him. So it's a shame.
You know what's funny? Actually, I did the exact same thing. It's just that because I'm +1 over you, I actually managed to wake up as Game 5 draft was going on. So like
that would be even early for you. That would be like 5 in the morning, wouldn't it? Or 6 in the morning?
It was 6:30, but I'm +1 over EU time.
Oh, I get you. Yeah. So for me, that
was
would
5:30 in EU. The whole thing for me was like, I knew I wanted to kind of wake up early to see how long it would have dragged on, because I was at like literally in my mind I told myself before going to bed, I'm expecting a 5-game series. So if I manage to wake up around 6 around that time, I should be able to catch up on like the last 2 games, or like at least the last game. I turn on my phone, open YouTube, and that's literally like game 5 draft was ongoing. And then I had to like quickly catch back on the 4 games before that. And then fully watch the last one. And yeah, actually, like there's a lot to talk about at this MSI. There are a lot of positive things, I think. There are so many positive things, but there are also some things that I'm still not fully convinced on. Not
Game
sure
5
how we want to.
for sure.
Yeah, for sure. That's something for sure I'll have to touch upon. But it's like, honestly, it's been probably one of the most entertaining tournaments I've watched.
I truly
I've
think
watched
it's
in
the
recent
best
times.
international. Like, I think this.
You mean
MSI,
so far?
Yeah, like in very possibly in League of Legends' history, this is the best international, because 5-game series with Fearless, having been there for every day but 2 days near the end, where like it's really hard to get interviews with Eastern players. So when I didn't get any interview recs, and there weren't any like extracurricular interviews, I just stay and watch it on the TV. But just getting to watch so many games from even the play-ins teams, like getting to see each play-in team play a minimum of 2 best-of-5s, just lets you see these players in these matchups so much more than you would in any other MSI format. And I think the net increase in games has led to much more exciting narratives and like a deeper sort of sense of the tournament, and it's such a competitive format as well.
Like the one thing that stood out to me is like, yes, the regional rankings in that sense is still quite clear. So obviously you have LCK and LPL being still the two best regions, I would technically. But the one thing is it's finally we don't get to see so many stomps, aside from unfortunately the FlyQuest G2 series, because yeah, EU, like I said, EU decided to give everything to Valorant,
Yeah.
and decided to be shit on League. Unfortunately, hopefully that balances out in the future. But the whole thing is even CFO, that we knew they were coming in as a pretty strong team. Pushing T1 to 5 games is nothing to be it's very, very, very how do you call it?
Impressive. Not
A big
difficult.
milestone.
Yeah.
And impressive, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So honestly, it was very enjoyable, even though for me, the time zone diff actually kind of killed the enjoyment for me. Having to catch up in the middle of the night wasn't ideal. But the quality of games, I think from the first few games of each series were really good. And I feel it's normal that the quality of games goes lower as the series goes on because of Fearless. But the one thing I've noticed, a lot of times games tend to be quite one-sided. It's the moment a team, and I think that's partially due to the meta. It's the moment a team gets a lead, unless it's an European team that, or a Western team that doesn't really know how to push their leads even further, it's very one-sided. Even in the T1 Genji series or in the T1 AL series, as soon as one team got a major goal lead by the 20th minute mark, they would just basically kind of slowly win by opening up their gap until it's 10k goal lead, and then you know that there's no way to come back, and I think it's just because teams have figured out kind of the ideal playstyle, and it's just a matter of moments of execution upon those crucial moments. So who shows up or who does the better fight will get the lead, and then after that it will just be slowly choking out the enemy teams.
Yeah, I think there's also been, frankly, and there's been a lot of people talking about this, there's been some pretty big coach gaps in terms of drafting in those game fives. Just to reference the grand finals, the Aurora Misfortune combo completely stifled 3 or 4 T1 engages, because as T1 walks forward, the Aurora W's forward and ults, and the MF starts channeling her ult. And you can't walk forward into the MF ult, and you can't walk out of the Aurora ult at any speed that will get you out of the MF ult. And T1 just repeatedly crumbled to this 2-person combo, despite the fact that I think picking Nidalee for Canyon there is sort of a do-nothing pick, but it was just that it was Canyon, and then they had a comp that could nullify T1. There's a lot of game fives throughout the series where we see these picks that just sort of stonewall the enemy comp. We see FlyQuest lose to AL because they first pick Galio, and FlyQuest just sort of throws up their hands and goes, didn't really have an answer to that. I was praying for the Vayne answer, the old caps tech. Dylan, I need Vayne here. But yeah, I think that is part of Fearless. And well, I wrote an article a little while back about sort of my doubts about Fearless. I think I was wrong overall in that the quality of the broadcast for fans is so much better than it was in terms of the number of games you got to see and the diversity of champions you got to see and how different those games looked and those team comps looked. I thought it was awesome.
What's the fix then for Game 5? Because I've seen a few people throwing around options. I've seen people saying allow mirror matchups and stuff, but then I don't know if we get into too much different territory, because then that's then you're training for things that you literally never use in any other scenario.
In my mind, there's 2 ways to do it. And one is you say, okay, Game 5 Fearless goes a little too far in terms of champion elimination, and you unwind it to some extent. The far end is you reset all of the Fearless. The other one is you do the old LCK Game 5, allow mirror picks. But I don't think that's the thing to do, because I think the problem may be that League of Legends' draft order and the timings of the draft are not built for Game 5 Fearless. And so the first thing I would look to do was give teams more time to pick in Game 5 of Fearless. Is like give you a draft pause, 30 so like for 30 seconds or wherever, where you can just stop the timer and you can discuss matchups, you can discuss picks, because I think we're still using the exact same like timings of how long you have to ban, how long you have to pick, from when you could just pick the same champ over and over and over. And so the first thing I do is just, not restrict teams less in what they can pick, but just give them more time to think about it on stage. And I think that's an easy, simple fix that you can look at and be like, hey, maybe you extend the time between games 4 and 5, right? You do a longer break or whatever that may be. But the thing I would lean into is like, hey, let's try to let you prepare more for game 5s and see if that's still a problem, and then we can address it. But this is a thing I heard from like a lot of press and a lot of influencers and stuff at the event and then after the event, is just like, I can definitely see some of these drafts being like, they drafted Galio, what do we take? And if they had another 2 minutes somewhere in that draft or another 10 minutes backstage, theoretically, these are things you can think of. But yeah, that would be my sort of instinct, is to just like, let's look at the timings of like between games, because we've changed nothing about how much preparation is allowed for a game 5 that is much more complicated than it was before.
One
Honestly,
good. I'll just say quickly,
yeah.
one that I saw. I forget who I saw that recommended it. Was maybe during the game 5 draft, imagine that like right now you have 30 seconds per pick or ban, imagine, and let's say for argument's sake, you've got a total of 5 minutes across the draft in those increments. Maybe give the teams 5 minutes, or maybe even increase it a little bit, 6-7 minutes, but then have it like a stop clock. So their first pick, if it only takes them 10 seconds, then they've only used 10 seconds, and they've still got 4 minutes and 50 seconds left. And every time it's their pick, you start the timer again. And if they've got an easier pick, they can do it quickly. And then later picks, they've got more time because they've allocated more time. So it's almost like a little meta game. And again, It kind of adds a layer to it, but it doesn't have to increase the whole process to mess up the broadcast timings or whatever.
Yes.
But it could still help them in those like trickier picks. So I think that's a good option. I wouldn't mind seeing that.
I think I actually like that option a lot more, and that was something I was thinking about. It's kind of like when you're playing chess, right? That you have like the like a lot of time, and that's how much time you get. Going back to Nick's points, I agree with the first few points you mentioned about not really making changes to the draft process itself, just because I don't think it's like it adds a further layer of volatility that I don't think should be part of it, because like Fearless Draft also kind of makes coaching staff more important and more relevant, we've always talked about how like coaching staff in the past few years were kind of, they were there, obviously they were helpful because they would give you all the data and all the picks and all the insights that you needed to make sure that the stuff you played was technically on point, optimal. But then as soon as like the meta was fixed, it was just an exchange of picks most of the time, and didn't really like shake things up, And I think that we've seen this year, especially like in the LPL with Tabe, just to make an example, how a good coach that is able to understand and maximize the picks of each player, and also understand the team's identity and strengths and draft with those in mind, makes a lot of difference. I don't think adding the time is necessary, because most of the time when you're drafting, what ends up happening is like you're actually answering. Like you can do a lot of like draft scenarios, like draft prep, but you're still dependent on what type of stuff the other team is playing, right? And that only happens when once you're stage. So like adding time, for me doesn't make much of a diff, because I don't think like adding 1 or 2 minutes in total would magically shake the things. But at least having like the 5-minute thing where you decide how you want to allot that time selection on the draft gives you a clear idea of what direction you might want to go for in a given draft, because there are some times where like the players insta pick or like choose very quickly, but you clearly see that they're buying time.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they will just hover a champion and then stay there until like the 30 seconds end, because they're not thinking about that champion itself. They're thinking all the other things after. So they just buy themselves time, and well, that also gives time to the enemies. You know, it's it doesn't really like make much of a difference, I think. So if you're able to because I think most of the times bans are very quick. Like there are some times that bans get instantly banned out, especially on red side. For example, you used to have like Gwen, Varus, Kalista, like those kind of picks were like insta ban level. And that added time in the draft can actually make a difference on certain picks.
Kalista confirmably no longer insta-ban level. I think I would let my opponent play Kalista if I was a team at this tournament.
No, okay, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I'm just like making an example because
yeah.
I mean, there were a lot of questionable weird picks, and I'm still fine. Like, I'm very curious to see like how much scrims were going, because seeing multiple champions on 0% win rate, despite being played and being prio that heavy, is like very, very weird. And that kind of also
go ahead.
makes me question how teams have been scrimming, because obviously it was a very packed schedule, and it's all like for example during Worlds you have like a month, and like the strongest teams that go all the way through actually used to have a week to prep. Obviously they had like media days in between, but they had a lot more days, and here it's like you're playing back to back. T1 played like I think it was AL or T1 like played 3 BO3 like BO5s in a span of like 4 days.
Yeah.
You know you're not going to have like much prep, you know.
Yeah, I had this conversation with friends where it was like, you remember some international events for like the OP packs, like the Ardent Sensor meta and like it's another Azir Corki Worlds or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna remember this MSI for the picks that were the exact opposite of power picks and just like lost games, like TF, like Ezreal lost most of his games, Kalista, of course. It was really kind of wild to see in some ways how stubborn teams are, because like respectfully, when Kalista is 0-9 at the tournament, I want you to pick anything else. Like just try something that isn't Kalista or TF, because it's just not working for anybody and everyone's picking it. And you know, maybe it's a Scream God champion, but just like it's not happening on stage. Please pick any other champion. It's fearless. You'll be fine. And yet we still see like TF 08, Kalista 010. I think
the one thing I could argue on this, it's like I feel like TF and Kalista actually match what the meta wants you to do, but I feel like sometimes like you probably might not end up playing the games throughout in scrims, because like one team gets super ahead and then probably just say, oh, like let's remake and stuff. That's something that sometimes happen, right?
Vara was talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like Kalista and Twisted Fate technically should get you like the early prio, which allows you to play around dragons, lets you get a lot of early game agency that opens up like a substantial lead on paper. But the issue is like when you play out the games fully on stage, you know that Twisted Fate and Kalista will never be enough in terms of damage output, because like I'm not sure how you guys are seeing the meta right now. I've been like doing kind of like trying to catch up and analyze it. It's like you need to have at least one main carry and one secondary carry to make sure that you're kind of have enough damage output. But at the same time, you also have to make sure that you have enough range, because you gotta poke and harass before a fight, because you need to control the areas around the drakes and make sure that you can get the dragon stacking strategy to work. And the issue with Twist of Fate and Kalista is that you get none of these two things. Kalista has good damage, but she falls off super quickly unless she's super ahead. Twisted Fate has the agency, but he doesn't have the range like other control mages have. So like, for example, Azir, Cassiopeia, we've also seen Talia, these kind of champions that can kind of like zone out or like get control of areas with their pure sheer range or like zoning tools. You only have one single target stun on Twisted Fate, and that's it. You don't really have much anything else to offer, and you also don't have the damage. So like when you're drafting these kind of two picks, you end up having like no damage at all unless you have like strong carry jungler and then decent DPS and it's like a damage focused carry top. But then what that creates is an issue where usually Kalista gets played with Nico and Renata, so you don't have hard engage. So you're forced to play hard engage on jungler or like a tanky champion on jungle or top. But one tank is not good enough because he gets shredded by the enemy team, because the enemy team will be playing that kind of team comp I was mentioning before. So I think that's one of the biggest reasons why the comp doesn't really like the Renata and Twisted Fate picks didn't really work. And I'm kind of sad because like Twisted Fate is clearly like close to used to be close to OP levels in solo queue. Or it's like very high prio because of the buffs he received. And so he already got nerfed once again. So basically what they did is only shave him 10 seconds off the ultimate. But that's the only buff that he got like over the past few four patches. So he will probably be into like not as good in solo queue, but he's already too weak for pro play. And that's the same thing we have with Renata as well. Like she has been nerfed so many times since the start of the season because everyone was playing her. But the issue is like because pro play she was so OP, right? Had to find a way to nerf her, but now she's too weak for solo queue and still like technically not a prio pick. Or like she's still a prio pick, but not a powerful pick in pro play.
And I think there's a lot going into that sort of like the border of champions in that realm that you're describing in Fearless is like there's a lot of teams who I think like find a champion who's in that middle ground and then are like, oh, that's good enough. And that shit up a lot. But like for everything that we are saying about like all of like these kind of like interesting like caveats to MSI, the event was so good. There were crazy series and awesome champion diversity. And like, frankly, there's some stuff where I'm like, the fact that Swain never showed up again after CFO like bodied T1's Death Ball comp with just like this Swain pick who like at several points was literally like T-posing in the middle of T1 and they can't kill him, just like doing hundreds and hundreds of damage. I think it shows that like this is a great first showing for Fearless internationally, but like certainly come Worlds, I'm going to be really excited to see what happens. And like so many games, I think like Ethan and I counted, and at the end of MSI, I did 33 interviews in 16 days, including the Riftbound stuff, which will be coming out later. And just like talking to the fans and talking to the writers and all the people who were there, everyone was just super happy to get that many games and just see these teams play this much. And then for working the event, it was amazing. Most interviews I've ever gotten. I caught the big one, and
who was this guy? I saw this one, but I'd never heard of this guy. He won.
So
FAKER, is that?
He's FAKER, French. Originally from KC Academy, and then T1 poached him. Really promising French player. Coming up big time. But I got
he did the inverse Poby move, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Him and Poby are opposite sides of a scale, and they have to sort of go back and forth. But yeah, I got to speak to FAKER on one of the days, which is always wild because anyone who's worked a LoL esports event knows that everyone is requesting FAKER every event, and the only reason you don't request FAKER is if you already got him this. Yeah, every day, everyone's requesting him, and the only reason you don't is if you already got your one FAKER interview for the event. Because let's be honest, we all know you never get two. And so I just got the notification on my phone, and I quietly like freaked out for a couple minutes because like you kind of never expect it to happen like each individual time you click the box or you send in Faker's name, and then you just sort of move on. But as the article sort of lays out, I was like, well, this guy has been asked every competitive question ever, and will continue to be asked every question about like the meta in the event. And I've been having some positive fan response, especially from like MKOI fans and stuff. But just talking about like why people like this goofy little game that we all spend so much time thinking and talking about and playing. And so I asked him a bunch of questions about like how he enjoys the game in other ways. And it's Faker, so a bunch of them he was like, I don't really know, man. But
Like this
as
one.
always, Faker will give you.
Yeah, what's your favorite
Yeah.
splash art? I don't know. I don't really pay attention.
And then, but then he picked his own splash art, which, like, listen, good marketing. That guy knows how to sell a skin. But sort of the approach I wanted to take was like, and I had this conversation with some of the Riot people beforehand. Is like, for all the achievements and titles that Faker has, as I think many of us can relate to, he was just like a quiet kid from Seoul who saw this like game where you play as magical characters and brawl with other people and was like, that's my thing. I found it. And the only difference between him and everybody else is that he's the best to ever do it. But he's a super chill guy. Pretty funny, as you can see in the H1, the title for the article. It was a lovely time, and shouts out to Ji-Sun Park, the notorious JSP, as I like to refer to her, who literally does every interview that you've ever seen with a Korean player out of love of the game. She doesn't get paid more. She doesn't have to come down to the press room anytime, but she does because she's the GOAT. And yeah, awesome little interview. I think people had fun with it, and I just tried to take an angle that I hadn't really seen taken.
Yep, good job. It's funny you say about the translations, because yeah, a lot of people probably don't realize that, especially when it's the remote interviews that are probably like I don't know about the majority, but it's a lot of what you see is remote interviews. People covering these events as well, and even when you're doing an interview remotely and there's a translator, they're not even on screen, but you obviously if you've watched enough League and you're that into it, you can tell who it is, and a lot of the time it is Ji-Sun, who'll be just translating them. She's not even, she is an on-camera talent, but she's just down there in the weeds doing the translations of people. I had one on Masters Toronto. Obviously wasn't with Ji-Sun, but in Valorant they've got Jen Lee, which is kind of like Valorant's Ji-Sun in a way. Like she came from the LCK. I think she was on the LCK actually on the Korean broadcast before, but she does like the VCT Pacific, and when there's these global events, she's usually there like interviewing the Korean players, and she would like translate live. And I did an interview with Genji's Munchkin when they'd just been eliminated, and it was her. I'm 95% sure it was Jen Lee translating, but again, it's remote and I can't see her. I just hear her doing the translations. And I was accused, and people in the Reddit comments were like accusing it of being mistranslated and stuff, and like I'm just laughing to myself, with them not realizing it's like probably the best person on the planet to be able to translate an interview around Valorant.
Like the one thing I've had Ji-Sun translate the Viper interview at first hand, and it's like I obviously she has a lot, like many years of experience, but you just gotta praise like Ji-Sun's ability to translate any kind of question basically live. And you technically most of the time those questions are not even like, it's not like you tell her beforehand and see she knows. She's just translating on the go. And I think she does a really good job on top of that, like to actually translate the player's answers with the same kind of vibe. Even like you can tell based on how she words things and how she tries to like explain it to you, this kind of giving as if she was just representing the player, And I think that's something that's really hard to do for live, like for any translator, even more so for live translators. Like for example, I know Chinese. I could technically potentially do that. I do it sometimes for my Chinese speaking friends, but it doesn't come natural. It's like very robotic in that sense, But she's still conveying kind of like the mood and the energy and the atmosphere, like the whole vibe that the player is giving out while she's answering. And I think that's really, really important, and that adds a lot of value to the interviews,
Yeah, definitely. I ended up using a transcription program on for some of these interviews, including the Faker one, that I realized partway through would actually, when you set the transcription language, would grab like Faker's Korean and translate it. And so I could see side by side, like sort of the technical Korean of what Faker said, and then the context and tone and like subtleties of both language that Ji-sun is managing to sort of interpret in each direction in real time. Yeah, that's just the goat, man. Shouts out to her. She's awesome at her job and is super nice, super chill, and just does it for love of the game.
I was when I watch it, I just think like, how do they even remember what they've said? Yeah, the player could have like a 2-minute answer, and they've got to like sit there and remember all of it. Especially the on-camera ones.
Yeah.
I've seen them when I've been at events before. I've seen like, especially press conferences. I noticed it. Sometimes they'll like have their phone, and like as the player's talking, they're writing it down so they can kind of translate it from reading it. But yeah, to do it live, like on camera, fuck knows how they manage that. But yeah, there we go. So MSI's done. No break at all, because we're straight into the Esports World Cup's league event now. And it's interesting having these ones. It's the same as what happened with Valorant as well, where you've got these like 2 internationals now back to back, which kind of adds an extra layer to it, where you've just seen all these teams against each other, and now most of them are in another tournament. Yeah, Davide, you're there on the ground. What are your expectations coming in? What's your what are your angles?
Like, honestly, my expectation is to not have expectations, which can sound kind of weird. Like, I have the only expectation for me would be, I wouldn't be surprised seeing a non-finalist, like MSI finalist, make it like take the trophy, just because it's like the players literally have won 2 days ago, that have played a final 2 days ago. They're literally flying here fully jet lagged, and then they have like another 2-day break, but they will be swamped by media stuff to do. So like I even doubt they were going to have like any prep, and they have to play instantly. The one thing that helps them out is potentially like they play on the same patch, so that kind of probably will maintain a higher quality of games. My biggest concern is just the BO1 format. It's good for us. It's like good for Western teams, because potentially that could upset a lot of things. And the fact that we have a group draw with Furia, C9, G2, and FlyQuest means that one is Western team is guaranteed to go through to the quarterfinals, and so that means we'll also get East versus West rematch potentially. But yeah, it's going to be like a weird format, and honestly, like they're playing back to back. It's going to be very tiring for everyone. So I wouldn't be surprised like if some teams do not show up, kind of like it did with potentially like with Valorant, that it's just like you're just here because you have to play. But I doubt the quality of the matches will be as high. And
yeah,
that is like going back to what I said about the meta, that like being BO1s, that's kind of my issue. Like we might get to see a lot of like one-sided BO1s, and that's not good for viewership because of just how the meta is. That's my biggest concern.
It's basically the opposite of MSI to me, where
Yeah.
MSI, everything's BO5. You're going to get to see multiple games from these teams. Double elimination BO5. So like, you've got at least 6 games to prove yourself, to like try to get something in there, show that you can close out some games. And in the wake of doing that many BO5s for everybody, for working that hard, and like, I know for a lot of the Korean and Chinese players that I talked to, they were having a little bit of a tough time sometimes, those who hadn't like prepped their sleep schedule, because I believe like Guma Yusi fully prepared his sleep schedule and was living on Vancouver time in Korea beforehand. But it's the middle of the summer here. The days are super duper long on the West Coast in the summer. And so I know there were some people who were still pretty jet lagged going into the knockout stage. And so then to have to fly all the way to Riyadh, do all the media stuff, do all the meeting people and the publicity stuff that you are inevitably going to get ranked into, go shake some hands, congratulate people, etc., etc. Like, I just don't think you can expect games that are nearly as good as MSI. And that's part of the problem with EWC's format, is just like where it's put in the season after the event that everyone's like actually harding for, and then being flown into a very different time zone right now. I think frankly the games could be a mess. Like everyone could be tired and a little overworked. And so the teams that I'd be hopeful for going into this chaotic brawl are teams like CFO, like MKOI, who did get to go back a little earlier, who have been able to prep, have been able to work more and more towards EWC specifically. Whereas, I think T1 and Gen G are probably going to have a pretty tough go of things flying out to Riyadh like 4 days later or whatever.
Yeah, just to make an example, like I was interviewing Forsaken from PRX the other day. And I'm not sure whether it was tiredness or what happened, but when I just noticed that when like he went past through me, his eyes were so red. It felt like he either like didn't sleep anything, or like he literally was pulling like like he was going overtime. And you could clearly see like a lot of the players were feeling quite tired from maybe it's partially from the heat, but also obviously from the time zone. And I think that could be an issue. Like, for example, that happened last year. That actually happened also this year with First Stand after some of the teams went back to their own regions. Like you had basically had to prepare immediately for the second split, and you don't have much time to prep anyway. And on top of that, you're feeling jet lagged, or you have the time zone diff. That doesn't like that. That is also a second negative effect. And I think it actually like could potentially hurt play like the top teams. Obviously, they get one more day because they're ready straight to the quarterfinals. But at the same time, I don't think one day will will have that much of a benefit, in the bigger in the grand scheme of things. But yeah,
I also know. There are teams coming from MSI. So, as there always is at these kind of tournaments, it seems, you fly this many people in from various places, people start to get sick, and they're like, as has happened at many a tournament, there was a little bit of like, again, not COVID or anything, but there was like a cold, some kind of bug going around. We talked about it like on in the BLG players. A couple members of the press ended up like getting like there are teams who have been feeling pretty crappy in like I bet in the week preceding this. On top of that, like we talked about the sickness going through the teams at MSI, and well, it didn't seem to be a huge role then. Like I think when you're looking at prepping for this event, like you've got teams who are nursing off colds at the same time as jet lag and everything else. And it's the trouble of sort of trying to jam this pseudo international where it is in the schedule, at least like this year with the time zone that MSI was in, is like with the exception of teams like MKOI who really have something to prove going in, like who fell out early, and this is sort of their chance to redeem themselves. I'm not sure how many teams are going to be taking it too seriously, apart from people who fell out early of MSI, or like teams like C9, because C9's there, right?
Yeah.
And it gets a second seed at EWC. Yeah. Like C9's going to take it seriously. Obviously, they've been prepping for it. But if you did pretty well at MSI, I'm just like not sure how much time and how much energy you'd have to like really push at EWC, which does mean like, hey, maybe NA stands a chance, maybe EU stands a chance.
Yes,
I'm actually excited about the two teams missing out. Sorry to interrupt on that, but just like Cloud9 and Hanwha Life, I think
that's the coolest part.
Especially, actually, more than HLE, I'm actually interested in seeing Cloud9 because they were super close to actually potentially making it to MSI. through the playoffs, and so that kind of gives me hope of seeing like kind of matching FlyQuest and C9 in terms of like potential. And so like getting a reach match now, even though it's only a BO1, could be like a good test and a good chance for them to actually get some international experience somehow. Even though they didn't, represent, they weren't there for first and an MSI.
I mean, we have an interview that I suppose might be out by the time this airs. May or may not be. We'll see. With LTA Commissioner Mark Z, in which he says, like as an NA fan, he thinks we should take G2 slot from them. He thinks Cloud9 should be there and not G2, and I am excited for him to prove that right, because like we're gonna show EU. If we were still just losing to LPL LCK, we gotta kick EU while they're down. We gotta take another series off them, send them home again. That's where
a good
I'm
point, actually. BO1s or not, that group with G2, FlyQuest, and Cloud9, that'll be could be an interesting one depending on which way that goes.
Yeah, my biggest worry is that like the G2 Furia one actually.
Yeah.
Just because of
Furia
upsetting G2. Yeah, like they already kind of upset G2 in the play-ins. So that is really scary for me,
Yeah, you're not ready for my LTA Seoul goats. I love those guys. Yasuo bot, baby. Yasuo bot.
But that's crazy as well. Like of these GSL groups, there's going to be 2 teams that go home with 0-2 playing 2 best-of-1s, which is kind of mental. But you say about, especially what you said about PaperX as well, these teams that have come from, that have like deep runs at MSI, and especially you think the Asian teams, and it's the same for PRX, where they're based in Seoul, they've gone to NA to have to adjust to NA time zone. Now they're in Riyadh, which is like more or less like the EU time zone as well. They're going to be fucked. And saying about PaperX especially, they're really unlucky because VCT Pacific literally starts tomorrow, so they've gone back to Korea and like almost immediately they're playing again. I think LCK's got a bit of a break. I was just checking, or maybe probably actually not even that much. Once this is finished, they'll have a few days as well. So it's like there's like no time between the events at all to like readjust or anything. That's why probably Handball Life
for sure
are probably like the dark horse favorites now. Like given that, but then again, where the format's like.
Totally see that.
Where it's mostly best of 3s as well, like you could have more easily upsets, and obviously single elim, which I wanted to talk about because I've seen like some debate of, I guess it happens all the time, but especially because of MSI and like the insane format. Basically people saying that they're glad that it's still single elim at Worlds, and I kind of wanted your guys' thoughts on that, because the one argument I always see for keeping single elimination at Worlds is basically people saying like, I like it that it's basically you like the matches where teams could get eliminated and it adds like more stakes because if you lose, you're out. The way I see it though, I don't even feel that you lose that from double elim, because then just the lower bracket has the same thing. Like once it gets to lower bracket, it kind of, I feel like it can hype it up more because it's like, right, we've had our chance, we've blown the first chance, we cannot lose this game now, and it's the same thing for both teams. They're both in like this scrappy mess at the bottom. I don't feel like you lose like the stakes in that sense for.
I think you do. I think you do, and I'll just do a counter example I actually had with other like colleagues here. If Worlds 2022 had double elim, we were probably talking T1 becoming 2022 world champions. Because I definitely see a scenario where like you don't get to see the DRX run if it was double elim, because they probably would have made like they barely beat EDG. But then like if they lose against T1 like in the upper bracket. They win in the upper bracket, but they didn't get a second chance. I doubt that T1 would honestly like lose a second time, So I think for me, it's actually single elim is still the way to go, the way I see it, just because I kind of want to see more upsets. Or like I'm willing to trade that for upsets. Because I feel
Yeah.
like in the end we had that, like we also talking about like the power rankings we did. We basically nailed all the teams aside from CFO and McCoy. But like the top 4 we nailed everything. The bottom 3 we nailed them. So, and also like the 6th place team. So it was very clear coming into the tournament who we were expecting. The only good thing that made MSI, like not the only good thing, but like the main good thing that made MSI good is the fact that we had much closer series between the teams. But in the end, it was always the ones we expected to make it all to make it all the way through, you know.
Yeah, I agree that for a couple reasons. Firstly, Worlds as a tournament is do or die time. MSI is, like, hey, we're inviting some of the best teams. We want this pool, and like, you have the time to do this. Worlds is like buck up or shut up. Like, win your games or get off the stage. And I think, especially with the Worlds groups format, I think if you do, if you do Worlds as it is, I wouldn't mind seeing like some change to how many games you play in groups. But like, I have had no complaints about the Worlds format really over the years, right? It produces hype matchups. It allows for like DRX Cinderella runs. And so as much as I love MSI, it's been a minute since there was a Worlds that didn't hit. So I'm willing to give it another try. And just while I am on it, you were talking about the time zone difference right before this.
Yeah.
PRX actually has to deal with 2 hours of jet lag than the other teams do, because Toronto is on the east side of Canada, and that is 3 hours. That is 3 hours ahead of where BC is. So that's another 3 days, if you use the rule of thumb, that it would take for them to acclimate to it, and I just don't think that's going to happen.
Like another point I was thinking about, it's like Worlds actually has more teams. So actually you get
That's the other
more,
thing.
like you get more games just because of the matchups you have to play out to make sure the team is actually like the strongest teams go through. You have the Swiss stage that literally is like best of 3, so best of 3s at the start, and then BO5s for the qualification elimination series. And it's like 16 teams playing at the same time. So you're going to have a good amount of games there. And I think that's kind of like why I wouldn't put double elimination at Worlds, because then you would get oversaturated, or like you would get crazy schedules once again, with the issue that you have to fit that into a much stricter schedule. And also from a logistic point of view, since they usually move the Swiss stage with the knockout stages, that would also extend potentially like the time needed to do each city in that sense. It's like, imagine like they played what was it, quarters and semis in Paris in 2 weekends, but then they also had to play London the weekend after. And if you add more BO5s in between, because you're going to get more BO5s in double elimination, that will create an issue where it's like some teams have to fly first, can't fly first. Like the upper bracket finalists could potentially like fly immediately towards London, and get accustomed like prep. And while the lower bracket teams would have to fly later, with all the potential like logistic issues that might come with it,
I would add
that's
that
why
is like entirely self-inflicted by wanting to do it in different cities. They could just do it in one place, but it is of course nice how they do that. Like when it's in Europe, you might get a chance that like some part of
I
it
think
in
when
your
it's
country
such
and
a
you go
long
to
tournament, like when it's such a long tournament, like one month tournament, I think that actually having 1 month within the same city isn't ideal, which I think is why I really like MSI, because everything will happen from start to finish in 2 weeks. And I think that 3 cities potentially is a little too much for how the tournament is. It would probably just be better to do, um, like first part of the tournament of Worlds on one city, and then that's all the entire knockout stage on the other one. Not sure. Like there's probably some other reasons as to why they're doing 3 cities right now.
Well,
Yeah.
I'd think of usually, and this is super common. Cities
Mhm.
will like court big events like this, like give you a bunch of support, give you some tax reimbursements, that kind of thing. And so my bet is like it's probably just net most like efficient for Riot to move things around within a country to get a bunch of different local viewers, and then at the same time, you can like I'm willing to bet there were some like tax benefits. Vancouver famously has great film tax benefits. That there's some very clear reasons why like it came to Vancouver and stayed where it stayed in the specific stadium that it did. I think there's lots of reasons that can go into it. But as with this MSI, let's give Worlds one try. It's a brave new fearless world out there. And this was our first true international of the era of Fearless, and it was awesome. So let's see how Worlds goes. I'm willing to take a look at it and reevaluate, but until I have an event under my belt, I think it's just we'll find out in October, November.
I'm really excited, honestly.
Yeah, I'm so psyched.
The one thing, there's the whole discussion of China hasn't really won internationals. I mean, they won MSI 2023. That was the last one. And then with JDG, and then ever since then they just we're a top team, but like the closest they got was last year with the BLG. But it feels like this year, like both BLG and AL currently, based on what they've shown so far, they don't really have the level to match T1 and Gen G. Obviously things could change. We were talking about we were not shitting on T1, but we were quite disappointed with how they were doing at the start, and look where we are right now. So I'm still quite positive about the LPL. I just think that it would be a big thing, in terms of, for multiple reasons, like seeing LPL do well in China on home soil. But I think it's just that like LPL needs to figure out a way to like raise their level, because the whole impression I got is like AL is very akin like to an LCK team. It's just that the player, like the combination of the players in their potential like highest ceiling is probably not as high as T1s and Gen Gs. And I think there are other LPL teams that have technically a higher ceiling, but they're not reaching it because their coaching staff, or because of player identity is not meshing well with one another, and that doesn't really help when you're going to prepare for the most competitive tournament of the season. Like if AAL is going back there and top esports, BLG, IG, JDG don't really step it up, they're not going to give them a good time to prep for when Worlds come around.
Yeah, I think it's going to be super interesting. MSI does have the little bit of the caveat of I know firsthand that these OPL teams were sick. Like they just had players who were not feeling good on match days. But at the same time, I do think that what you're saying is like totally right. We need to see that ceiling raise. But man, am I hopeful? Like, holy cow, this Tarzan guy is pretty good at jungle. Shanks is amazing. Elk on Knight. Like, the LPL has no shortage of really good players who had amazing showings. But the problem is just Gen G is so good, and T1 at internationals is T1 at internationals, and so the LPL just had a bit of a tough early end, leaving us with KR finals. But yeah, man, I'm just so psyched to see these teams at the next Riot International. EWC, just because of where it is, just feels like a little bit like an MSI aftershock, like the deleted scenes from MSI kind of thing. I'm still excited to see the deleted scenes, and I'm sure there'll be some great matches. But as always, if it's not on the golden road, I'm not too worried about how any given team performs. If Gen G don't win this thing, I don't think we can start catastrophizing.
Yeah, it's almost like it's hard. It's
I mean,
an event you wouldn't really have
yeah.
many takeaways for anyone except for like maybe whoever wins it. Like whoever wins it is nice, and they win a
Yeah.
international with a best of 5 final, and obviously loads of money. And that's the kind of awkward thing at the moment, where it's like the format doesn't help for sure with Valorant as well.
Really
For it
doesn't.
to not have the pedigree, so it just doesn't feel, especially right after MSI, with like the MSI format where it's so drilled to like make sure you get the best team and you get the best teams playing two times against each other half the time. Yeah, to come into like what does look like more like a Mickey Mouse tournament, but then there's like the awkwardness, I suppose, where for orgs it's like an enormous tournament because they get like way more money, or they could get at least. I don't know what the MSI prize pool was actually. I could be and shit. Oh, wait, MSI.
It's 2 million
It's 2
this
mil.
year.
2 mil.
All right,
Yeah,
so
it's 2
it's
mil.
the same prize pool then, but for like a few
Sorry?
days tournament where
Yeah.
where
Couldn't
it's all
meet in
best
time.
of threes and that.
I mean, the one thing is like the whole thing is not just about the EWC LoL tournament itself. It's just like basically winning the EWC LoL tournament kind of also means that you will get a shitload of points for the club championship, and that will give more money to the orgs.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
so
and
like, you know, it's I think it's good. The obviously the whole issue of hosting this kind of like multi game events with such strict schedules, obviously you're going to have to sacrifice something. So if you want to have more teams, you're going to have bad formats because you have to get rid of a lot of things very quickly. And if you call fewer teams, then the thing can get potentially a little bit boring because, like, even last year they had like 8 teams, right? And then with the like the top seeds from the 4 major regions, and that basically was a Mickey Mouse tournament because it was just like a tuned down version of MSI. And the fact that it came right after MSI didn't help because you all have all the hype from there, and then you're coming here. I think at least this year they had kind of the nice thing, I would call it, of adding 2 teams that didn't make it to the MSI, and I think those 2
that's
teams
the
are actually
appeal.
quite valid. You know, HLE and Cena are actually quite valid teams, and I'm kind of happy to see them how they perform like against other top international teams.
Mhm.
I just think that obviously having 12 teams makes it really hard,
Yeah,
to
well,
everything.
and I think that is the one thing that EWC's format has going for it. Giving all of the timing caveats that we're talking about, is like they invited more teams than Riot, and so if I'm a C9 fan, if I'm an HLE fan, right, like we could potentially see the Zeus T1 matchup at an international. That's a cool thing to have running around in the possible pairings kind of thing, and so. The one thing that does appeal to me about EWC is like, yeah, will I be taking a look at the C9 games? Will I be taking a look at those HLE games and like really trying to get a better view on these teams, and as well as like the teams that left early, like MKOI, Furia. These are teams that like I'd love to see more from. And so the appeal is the teams that you didn't get to see or didn't see enough of at MSI, you will get to see, but the takeaways will be lessened because like more than half the tournament is just exhausted after MSI.
Yeah, I think like any teams that have kind of got something to prove, it's kind of easier to do it here. Like if you're G2, where you would have been very disappointed with MSI, because the format's a bit easier and like more likely for upsets. Imagine G2 get to the quarterfinals and they get a 2-1 against BLG or something, and then they go out in the semis. Everyone, like, when you're thinking clearly, you know that 2-1 is like maybe not the biggest achievement in the world. It's the best of 3. It could have been a fluke, blah blah blah. BLG are tired, whatever. They're sick. But then from G2, you can even like when you're, especially if you're like a coaching staff or something, you're trying to inspire your team. You just tell them like, fuck whatever everyone's saying about it. We just beat an Asian team in a best of series, and you can kind of use it for some level of confidence. So it's useful for that kind of thing, I think. But yeah, obviously it's gonna will look a bit awkward after MSI.
It can also probably be good for a truth that is among esports. Like if you're a Western team and you make semifinals, or like God forbid you make finals, that's that's a useful that is a useful piece of branding that you can go back to sponsors and partners and parent companies and be like, hey, international event, big publicity. Saudi Arabia is doing a lot to sort of try to make EWC like this big sort of event of the summer. And just having another event that you can place well at, that you can point to when it comes to like, I had a conversation with some people, and like, for example, there is no sign that G2, despite the online outrage, has any plans to replace Skewmond anytime soon. That sounds like that's a long haul pickup for them. But like if G2 performs well here, that helps them sort of go back and point to some of these developmental choices on their roster, like Skew, or in MKOI's case, if they can sort of pull themselves back from MSI, I do think you can totally come back to the teams in your orgs and sort of point to that as like, hey, here's some potential. Here's proof of the potential that we didn't necessarily get to showcase at MSI. So there's a lot of positives, but I think coming off of such a heater of MSI, I think Lee put it best. Like, it feels a little Mickey Mouse. But hey, Mickey Mouse is the biggest for a reason. So
Who do you think will win if you had to make a name?
right you know what? I'm like not even gonna be serious. Like I'm not even gonna pretend I've like thought too much about it. My boy Mirwin's gonna win. Because that's my guy. So yeah. MKOI is winning EWC. You heard it here first.
Not your new mate Faker.
Someone is.
Faker already made a finals. He needs some time off.
They're the EWC holders as well. They've got to retain it, haven't they? What were you going to say though, Davide?
No, bro. Faker has to go watch his TV show, because I found out he's secretly watching an anime. That's next interview. He's secretly watching an anime, but won't tell anybody.
Like, being not like analytical, but like being rational to me, I would probably say T1, actually, because two reasons. First, I think they're very used to doing this. It's like they're probably one of the teams who have learned a lot on how to manage multiple stuff, like time zone diffs and
mad schedules probably as well, with their own media stuff.
Yes, with their mad schedule, because I feel like they have the mad schedule regardless of the play or not. So I think they would be probably a little more accustomed to it, and just the fact that I think actually T1 is one of the teams that struggle more when series go a long way, because they have always the impression they gave me, it's like they are always super good playing their own stuff, but once they get moved out a little bit of comfort, they need more time, or like they need more time to adjust, and that time they don't really have it right now. But with how the format is currently, I think they might have, and also the fact they already play a lot of MSI with the same patch, that prep will be useful for this time. And like, if I had to make like one crazy call, I would probably say HLE, but at the same time, I'm not really sure. I would have to see how they play against CFO to just get a clear idea, because I thought HLE was always a good team, but actually they like T1 stepped up at playoffs, like during the road to MSI, but I think it was also actually kind of boggling down, and I think that goes back to the whole conversation of jungle mid duos. Like, Ethan will probably hate me for saying it again, but I don't have any hate on the guy, on Peanut specifically, we're talking about. But it's just that, I actually love the guy. I actually used to be one of the biggest Peanut fans in the past. It's just that over these few years, I feel like his role has been redimensioned to fit the team, and that he kind of lost his way, in the sense that he had to adapt for his other teammates in the past, and that kind of hindered his own ability. And now he hasn't really been able to regain that, or like to take it up a notch and match like the Canyons, the Owners, and who am I thinking with right now? Yeah, and Tarzan. Yeah, this kind of level of junglers. So it's I would kind of have to see how HLE shows up, because honestly, like I really like the team. I think the team has potential, like they potential to match T1 and Gen G. And so rather than just saying, oh, I kind of just want to see the team get closer to their full potential, you know. That's kind of like how I'm always seeing teams in professional. Like I
It
get
definitely helped
more,
that
I
they've.
don't really care about who. Yeah,
I was going
what?
to say it should help that they've not been playing like they probably could have
Yeah, but
adjusted
the
to the
whole
time
thing,
zone
it's
already and
like,
all that.
yeah, my biggest concern is like I'm not sure who they scrimmed against, or like who they were prepping against coming into this, because they probably didn't go to Canada. I would assume they stayed in Korea, and then um like all the good teams were on the other side.
Well, I
That
think
race.
there's one candidate, and you brought them up, that like as a genuine dark horse for this tournament, CFO. CFO got eliminated in a super close series against T1, went home shortly after, would be, in my opinion, probably like the premier scrim partner that you'd be looking for, because they'll be back in LCP, they'll be back in a similar time zone to Korea, they can scrim Korean teams anyhow. I think CFO stand a chance of winning this, actually. I'm probably
I'm
not
not
gonna
like they had a lot of
seriously
time though,
pick.
because like CFO got knocked out. When was it? Like on against AL on the 8th. So
But
it's
Had a
that,
like they
few
didn't really
days.
have much
Yeah.
much.
yeah, and like those few days can matter, but just like, yeah, like again, like I thought CFO looked so good this tournament in a lot
Oh
of
yeah,
ways.
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
And I, if they keep doing what they did at First Strike or First Stand, sorry, MSI, and then like Worlds continues this pattern, 2025 is going to be like the story of CFO, and the return of the LCP, because like holy cow, is that team good? And we got to start respecting them as like probably a cut above NA, and then like they're scrapping with LCK and LPL, because oh my god, team is full of killers, man.
So we'll commit to these then. Davide, you're saying 8 Chile you're going to win. Nick says CFO.
No,
I'll,
I said
I'll,
T1. I said T1. I said
okay,
T1.
you have T1 then.
And
Nick has CFO. I'll go for the underdogs Gen G. I'll have them as mine since nobody else seems to
I'm
Okay,
think they've
for
got a
sure.
chance.
I do have to predict the full bias pick and pick my boys at MKOI, because Mirwin's a great dude, and the better he does here, the more likely it is he'll get some time off, and we can I can teach him Magic the Gathering, because me and Hanson are gonna drag Mirwin into a spell table lobby sometime soon, and teach him how to play Commander. So the better he does here, the more likely he gets some time off.
Fair enough. That was something I wanted to talk. Oh yeah, so this reminded me of something we talked about, and maybe at the end, Nick, if you are open to telling that story of what happened to you the other day without doxing yourself,
Oh
that would be
yes,
nice to hear at the end.
totally.
One thing I wanted to say just before we start rounding off as well, I'm pretty sure we talked about it on the last episode when we did our pick'ems, and our pick'ems, like the upper bracket was pretty much spot on, and we had the Gen G T1 upper bracket final. I'm pretty sure we had the Gen G T1 rematch in the final, and I was saying if Gen G win and it's Chovy beating Faker, then they have to set Chovy up as like the main guy at Worlds, because there's this thing that people have been saying for years, like we've got to start being realistic about planning for a life without Faker, or a LoL Esports without Faker, and making sure the fans are interested in the other players. But yeah, every year he's billed as like the main character. The guy goes and bloody wins it two times in a row, which doesn't help the arguments against doing that. But we have to kind of start planning. Obviously, Chovy's the guy, and the fact that he's beaten him at MSI twice to win it against Faker specifically, there's not a better time to start bigging up Chovy as the main guy. It would help if Gen G can win Worlds now as well. I'm sure that will do him some favors.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick, go on. Close. Oh yeah, go on.
There's a couple of the Gen G players. Like obviously Chovy is the main one. That like I think should like listen. You're gonna have to do Faker stuff. He's won it 2 in a row, and we kept saying he wouldn't win it that year, and was in finals the year before. The guy's going insane. Chovy should be like the knight in shining armor, Church of Chovy versus unkillable Demon King. I think you do that narrative.
Yeah.
You do like the holy paladin on a quest to kill the Demon King, and that's kind of the vibe you go for. I also think like quietly we can start setting up Canyon, because like how insane does this guy have to be for how long before we start doing something then? And Chovy is a cut above, but like you watch some of those Canyon games and you just watch like the jungle. I always love pulling this one out. It's from Norse mythology, the Gnunga Gap. It's like the gap that separates the realm of the frost giants and like pre-creation kind of. And yeah, he puts out some like Nordic mythology jungle gaps in some of those games. It's a little wild.
I think that's a good point actually. Yeah, the Chovy versus Faker and like pass the torch, and then if Chovy wins, then you can finally move over. And then if Faker wins, then we're back to square one. And we got to hope Chovy wins MSI next year to start it again.
Yep. Exactly. I think that's just what you go for is like, and they already did it a bunch like at the finals and stuff. It's like Chovy, if you're gonna go for the king, you better not miss. And I think that's what you go for, where it's like, hey, like, this is your chance to prove that you're really that guy. That like you really do have the chance to like replace Faker, and it's Faker's chance to prove that there's nobody who can replace Faker. Like even in era 3 of his career, this guy is still has the potential to be the GOAT. Worlds is gonna go crazy, man. It's gonna be a sick tournament.
I'm kind of excited to see what the MV will be about. Because it's like there are quite a few storylines I can think of.
Yeah.
But I think
depending on who makes it.
If there's something, I really hope for there will be something about BLG and T1, just like really making the last year's like finals like be the center of the story. But yeah, it's because obviously it's in China, we're kind of expected to have like something with the LPL. I would assume, like logically speaking, no, this is no, how you say, I have no info on that. Like, but yeah, I kind of wish they did, just because it's you gotta treat to the whole, like, cater to the not only the global fans but also the locals whenever Worlds is there.
Sure. Let's to close us out then. Nick, explain to us what happened to you the other day, because it is a mental story that I think is worth sharing.
I live on Salt Spring Island. It's this small rural island just off the coast of Vancouver Island, which is a pretty sizable island, essentially just to the west of Vancouver, out into the Pacific Ocean. And so there's a couple ways to like take ferries to the island, but generally the way to do it if you're traveling is to try to catch a direct ferry from Vancouver to Salt Spring. And so there was one at like 10 o'clock in the morning the day after MSI. Packed up all my stuff from my buddy's apartment where I was couch crashing, and made my way out to the ferry. I'm hauling a bunch of bags at this point. I've got like a huge hockey bag full of clothes and chargers and all the other things, and a tote and a backpack and my tripod inside of my backpack, partially zipped up around it. And so I'm hauling all this gear onto the ferry, and you can either go up like 2 to 3 flights of stairs, or you can wait for the elevator. And I'm lazy, and I'm hauling a bunch of bags, so I decided to wait for the elevator. And the first sort of load of people go in, and I've got too many bags, so I'm not going to hold people up, so I decided to wait. And the next group of people who are walking onto the ferry as sort of the foot passengers arrives, and there's this older gentleman with a backpack who's just sort of looking around, and he notices there's a tripod in my backpack, and he points at me and goes, "Photographer?" And I'm sure you two can relate, like when a normal human being asks you like what your job is. I have a little bit of a spiel, which is like, oh, no, not a photographer. It's a weird job. I'm like a sports journalist, like the people who interview NBA players, but for professional video games. I'm very used to people giving me a blank stare while I do this, and then I sort of have to like walk it all the way down to like, do you
like
have
that
you ever
Fortnite thing? That's like the usual one as well.
Like Clash of Clans.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes.
Like,
yes.
Yeah. A little bit. Sure. I can meet you there. And I'm explaining like, oh, there was this big tournament in Vancouver, and his eyes light up as I say big tournament in Vancouver, and he goes, "Of course there was. My son is G2's coach." And so standing at the elevator with me on my ferry home is Dylan Falco's father, who again, it's not like G2 just got eliminated and he's leaving MSI. They got eliminated earlier. He went skiing with Dylan, and Dylan's girlfriend has been traveling around a little bit and has friends out on the west coast of Canada. And it just so happens is old friends with the ex-owner slash founder of the seaplane company that flies people in and out of the harbor here. So that if you don't want to take a couple hours, you can fly to Vancouver in like 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. And he's friends with him and was coming out to visit his old friend. And we just happened to be at the exact same elevator at the exact same time. And were I not there, I imagine he wouldn't have like come up to me and asked me what I was doing. But yeah, complete wild coincidence. And then we just sort of talked for the ferry ride. I almost wish that I'd like thought to do like an interview or something, because it was a really interesting conversation with like you know, talking to him about like what it was like having Dylan, you know, the young academically successful computer science degree son, sit him down and be like, Dad, I'm not going to have a normal job. I know you really, really wanted me to, and I know I got this degree and everything, but my Reddit post just went viral and Andy from TSM has called me and I can't do the normal job thing. And it was really fun. Just sort of getting to hear like a parent's perspective on their kid excelling in esports. And it was also kind of fun, I think, to like really talk to him about like, you know, Dylan's my Canadian GOAT. That's one of the best coaches there is, like one of the legacy coaches who continues to prove himself as like a driving force behind EU competitive teams and EU domestic success. And so super fun, super weird coincidence. Shouts out Dylan Falco's dad, lovely dude. And I'll probably try to slide in for a Dylan Falco interview at some point next split to hit him with some of the trivia that his dad gave me over the years, because you know, there were some fun tidbits, like even when Dylan like comes home for the holidays in the off season to see his parents, like for Christmas or whatever, he's on the phone negotiating salaries and on his laptop and trying to get like rosters together and doing all the off season stuff. And yeah, his dad just had some fun stories about like getting used to having a kid with a very, very unusual career.
Unbelievable coincidence. There we go.
Unbelievable, truly once in a lifetime.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it there then for today, guys.
Sounds good.
I always think like whenever we do one, I think, well, not every time, but sometimes like today, I think, oh, we've got like 5 things in the doc. Like, probably be like an hour today, maybe a bit less, and then it's a chin wag with you guys.
Here
we
we
could go
are
all day, couldn't we? There it is.
We could.
But yeah, thank you everybody for listening. Do as always, you know, keep an eye on our wider coverage as well. Like we talked about MSI and EWC. There's a lot of stuff that we're pumping out on that, and we'll obviously continue to do so. So check out hotspawn.com.
And we're using Twitter now. Follow us on Twitter. We're actually using it now. We're posting
TikTok
stuff there now
as well. Davide's got some good TikToks. Well, you wouldn't see Davide on him, but from EWC with the Valorant players. Yeah, lots of stuff to check out.
You won't see him yet. We're gonna get him to start doing dances.
Yeah, that's how we hit the algo for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of wish I could ask Boaster to do it, but yeah.
Well, there was one you would.
Time is too short.
Yeah, I noticed you were interviewing Chronicle, and Boaster's like half in the frame in the background doing all this K-pop stuff.
Yeah, like he's obviously popular with Chinese media, and sometimes I kind of ask him like, what's like the next song, what's like the next choreo coming up, and sometimes he just like gives a preview of it, and then just remember I was interviewing Chronicle and being like trying to pay attention to what he was saying to ask the next questions, and it was like Boaster like on the literally next to him like doing dance moves, and like I kind of want to pick the other side and kind of like you know, record both. It's just that, you know, I'm stuck with the tripod and it was just only him.
Yep. Well, there you go. Get practicing, Davide, because you're next. Right.
Maybe, who knows?
Yeah. Better you than me, mate. So there we go. Catch you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Follow all the channels, and yeah, see you next week.